grade 12s. I hope you are doing well. I am Miss Malime. I will be joined by my colleagues, whom are Mr. Makubane, Miss Mapuda, and Miss Malachi. My colleagues and I will teach a topic lesson on settlement under the geography subject. Before we start with our lesson, I would like you to pause the video and answer the question displayed on the screen. What is a settlement? The concept of settlement. A settlement is a place whereby people live together, which includes buildings, economic activities, and transport networks. A settlement is a grouping of people, activities, building structures, and communication networks that functions as a single, integrated system on a regular daily basis. The above definition differentiates the four main elements that forms the term settlement, which are people, activities, building, structures, and communication networks. Settlements can be characterized as urban or rural depending on the kinds of activities that take place there.
Grade 12s. I'm Seluleo Makubane, and as you know, settlement is divided into two. There's rural settlement and urban settlement. But for now, we're going to deal with rural settlement. Then, as the lesson goes on, we're going to deal with urban settlement. What is rural settlement? Rural settlement refers to the areas outside cities and towns where population density is low. It is usually in the outskirts of urban areas. As you can see on the image on the left, we can see homes in the rural areas. They are far away from one another. Here's what we're going to discuss under this topic of rural settlement. We're going to discuss the patterns and functions, followed by the shapes of settlement, and lastly, the land use in rural settlement. Functions of rural areas. In rural areas, we can find residences or residential areas where people live, where there's communication between people, where there's interaction between people, where people work and practice in the economic activities found in that place. Tourist resorts are also found in rural areas, but not only in rural areas, they are also found in urban areas, but mostly in rurals. Tourist resorts are accommodations made for visitors or tourists that come to visit the game parks, natural parks, or natural reserves. Usually, natural parks and game parks are built in rural areas. Therefore, the tourist resorts will also be found in rural areas. Another function found in rural areas is extraction of raw materials. Mining is usually done in rural areas far away from people, far away from cities, because in rural areas there are less people nearby. This image shows a residential settlement found in rural areas. As you can see, there are spaces in between the homes. They are not close together, but they are dispersed from one another. And this is an image of a tourist resort. This accommodation is found in KwaZulu-Natal Hluhluwe Game Park. It is situated in rural areas. There's a game park nearby. Let's move to the shapes associated with rural settlements. There are many shapes associated with rural settlement, but we will focus on these three as they are the most common one. Firstly, we have round-shaped settlements. These settlements are known because the houses are constructed in a circular shape. That's why they are known as round shape. Such kind of settlements are found around lakes, dams, planned villages, water ponds, water reservoir, any water source. The circular form consists of a central open space surrounded by structures. This model has a center with homes, barnyards, schools, farms, churches, hospitals, and we can see these structures at the center of the settlement. As you move away from the settlement, you can see that on the outskirts, the village is surrounded by farmland, gardens, or we can say cultivated land. This also proves that the settlement is in rural areas. Secondly, we have T-shaped settlement. In this situation, houses are constructed at the tri-junctions of the roads. This road somehow meets with another road at the dead end, and the straight going road ends, and you will find the road going to the left and the right. Therefore, it will form a T-like letter. That's why it's called a T-shaped pattern. And lastly, crossroads. Crossroads settlement. Houses are built at the road intersections so that it may be easy to access or exit the village or the farm. To land use in rural areas. Number one, agriculture and farming. Approximately 12% of land in South Africa or in South African rural areas is mostly used for farming, both commercial and subsistence. Subsistence farming involves using the land to grow crops and breed animals that are a source of food for the family on the farm or on the village. In simpler terms, subsistence farming is growing crops or animals or livestock for your family and yourself, not to sell them, not to trade them, but to consume them. And commercial farming is to grow the crops or breed the animals that are then sold as food sources to other markets. The main aim of commercial farming is to generate profit or to generate income for the farmers. In simpler terms, we can say commercial farming is just business. The aim is to make money and make more profits and grow the farm. Commercial farming can be divided into two: stock farming and crop farming. Stock farming refers to growing animals, for example cattle, which produces beef, chicken, which produces chicken, sheep, which produces mutton, pigs produces pork. And crop farming is growing maize, wheat, fruit, and all other vegetables. Or a farmer can just combine both farmings, both farming like they can combine crop farming and stock farming. They can do it both to generate more profit. Another land use found in rural areas or rural settlement, it is forestry. Forestry refers to the planting of trees, growing them, and cut them at the later stage to sell them. To sell them to companies that can make papers and furnitures. And the last land use found in rural areas is extraction of raw materials. In other terms, it is just mining. For example, the extraction of coal and all other minerals, for example, zinc, platinum, gold, diamonds, and and all other stuff. On this slide, here's how to differentiate between commercial and subsistence farming. On the left, you can see a farmer planting vegetables in larger scales and growing cattle in larger scales. And on the right, we can see people planting food and vegetables in a smaller scale so that they can feed themselves and their families.
Hi, grade 12s. I hope you are well. I am Kagisoma Bunda, and today we're going to be looking at settlement geography. Now, in the study of settlements, we're going to look at how rural and urban settlements differ. Can you please look at these two pictures? They are very different, isn't it? Right. So, a rural settlement is one in which primary activities and functions are carried out. Take fishing as an example. We also have an urban settlement. It's the one in which people engage in secondary and tertiary activities and produce goods and services. Take food processing as an example. Now, we know that settlements have a function, have a site, have a situation. The site is the actual land on which a settlement is built, or an exact place where a settlement is built or is occupied. A situation is the location in relations to its human and physical surroundings, such as hills and rivers. And a function is the most important economic activity in a settlement. Okay, grade 12. Today we're going to learn about rural settlement issues. Firstly, we're going to learn what a rural urban migration is. A rural urban migration is a movement within a country in which people move from rural to urban areas. You hear rural, urban. They move from rural to urban areas. One example I can give you is a person moving from a village in Limpopo to Johannesburg. These people are either pushed from these places due to unfavored situations and are pulled to Johannesburg because they want a better quality of life. Also, what are the reasons for rural urban migrations? Number one, searching for employment. In urban locations, there are many employment chances because many industries are located there. Secondly, school system. Since there are many educational institutions in towns, many young people move there. Thirdly, social services. Social service facilities in urban areas are attractive, and this makes rural dwellers move there. Fourthly, a better quality of life. You can name more such as security, proper infrastructure. Grade 12s. Now we're going to look at the causes and consequences, which are the results of an action of rural depopulation on people and the economy. What is a rural depopulation? It's population density in rural areas, which is gradually going down over time, which is it's the population in rural areas is decreasing. Why is it decreasing? It is caused by the migration of people from rural areas in search for a higher quality of living and employment in urban areas. So, reasons that make people move are push and pull factors. Now, what is a push factor? A push factor or push factors are factors that influence people to leave. Let's say, for instance, I live from Limpopo because we collect water at the river, and now I want to improve and I go to Johannesburg where there is running water from the tap. Here are the examples of push factors. We have unemployment, natural disasters, poor or no health services, lack of electricity and water, food shortages that leads to poverty and farm killings. Push factors. Push factors are factors that influence people to move in. Here are examples: high employment rates, efficient health services, food security, electricity and water availability. You can add others: higher wages, effect of natural disaster is less, good transport network, safety and security. You can also name more. Now, grade 12, we're going to look at the effects of rural settlement. Firstly, the income declines. Why? Because unemployment is high. Poverty increases. Why? Because people don't have money to buy food to provide for their families. That is why some make farms so that they can provide for their families and also make an income. Labor shortages. People living to urban areas causes a shortage in businesses, in labor, and this causes an economic decline in rural areas. Services close as they are not supported anymore because people are living in numbers. More people leave rural areas, but we can always prevent rural depopulation. Here are the strategies. The first one: create more job opportunities, build tourist attraction sites, improve services, building tanks. Here are the strategies to prevent rural depopulation. The first one: create more job opportunities. The second one: build tourist attraction sites, improve services, build tanks to supply people with water, and more. But to show that people live in better lives, what should be there? How do we see that people live in have better lives? Sorry. The first one: sustainable land reform, food security for all, rural development and sustainable livelihoods, and job creation linked to the skills training. What is land reform? Land reform can be either redistribution, land restitution, or land tenure. Land distribution is the transfer of land to people who are not necessarily original owners. So the people who have been disadvantaged before are getting their land back. Land restitution: transfer of land back to original owners or their family members. Land tenure: an institution that outlines rules on how property rights to land should be allocated within societies.
Settlement classification precise complexity patterns and functions. Settlements come in all different shapes, sizes, and locations. The functions of a settlement can be identified by looking at its shape, size, site, and situation. Number one, we're going to unpack the characteristics of a settlement size. Size refers to the number of people living together. This can vary from the smallest isolated farmstead to a small hamlet. The size is also referred as the hierarchy of a settlement. Number two, we're going to unpack the characteristics of a settlement pattern. There are three distributions pattern, namely dispersed pattern, nucleated patterns, and linear patterns. Now we're going to unpack the three distribution patterns in detail. So the first one that we're going to unpack is dispersed pattern. Dispersed pattern, also known as spread out patterns, are found in areas that have a strong agricultural base. Dispersed patterns are found in rural settlements. On the third slide, now we're going to unpack the second distribution pattern, which is nucleated pattern. So nucleated patterns, also known as close together patterns, are settlements in which inhabitants' houses are built close to one another around a central point. Nucleated settlement occurs in areas where resources are focused in small areas. The third distribution pattern is linear pattern. So linear pattern is a special kind of concentrated pattern where most important economic resources for settlement exist in line. So here on the side there is a picture that shows us a linear pattern. Now we're going to unpack the key factors that affect the pattern of a settlement. So we have three factors that affect the pattern of a settlement. Number one, we have resources in an area. In the area. Number two, we have transportation methods. Number three, we have government policies. So these are the three factors that affect the pattern of a settlement. Urban settlement. Now we're going to unpack the origin of an urban settlement. So the origin and growth of an urban areas entails the process of urbanization, urban growth, and urban expansion. Urban settlements refers to the multifunctional settlement dominated by secondary and tertiary activities. Urban settlement developed when agricultural system were well established and effective means of transportation was available to access food. Urbanization is the process whereby the percentage of people living in urban areas increase. Impact of site and situation. The site is the actual location of a settlement on the earth, and it's composed of the physical characteristics of the landscape specific to the area. These include factors like water, grazing, fertile soil, and electricity. Impact of site and situation. The situation of a settlement is defined as the location of a place relative to its surroundings and other places. Factors included in an area's situation include the accessibility of the location. Classification of urban settlement per function. Like rural areas, urban settlements are classified on various bases. However, classification based on size and functions are most common. The classification are as follows. So number one, we have a town, which is a place which have less than 100,000 population. Number two, we have city, which is an urban settlement that have a population between 100,000 to 1 million. And then number three, we have metropolitan cities. Metropolitan cities are cities that have a population in between 1 million to 5 million. Functional classification of urban places according to sector, industry category, and some pictures. So firstly, we have primary activity, which is mining and quarrying. We have industry, which is manufacturing and processing. We have transport and communications. So on the other side, I have inserted pictures that shows us these sectors.
Urban issues related to increase in urbanization. Traffic congestion, a condition on road networks that occurs as use increase and is characterized by slower speeds, longer trip times, and increase in vehicular queuing. This picture depicts how a traffic congestion looks like. There are issues that relate to traffic congestion. The increase in vehicles may result to increase in urbanization. There are certain types of transportation that do not function normally during traffic congestion. This normally happens in busy hours, for instance, in the morning when going to school or work, and afternoon when coming from school or work. Solutions to implement in order to deal with the issues of traffic congestion. Implement uneven working hours, where employees will commence at different times, for instance, day and night shifts, so that workers do not travel at the same time. Public transportation lanes, including taxis and buses like Reavaya, must have separate routes. Introduction of new forms of transportation, cycling or walking if the distance is short. Also improving railway lines. Housing shortages. It means not having enough houses to accommodate people in an area. This picture depicts an area with thousands of shacks. This implies that there is no proper housing. Issues that relate to housing shortages. The increase in urban population leads to insufficient housing. Government not delivering houses or stances for residents to build houses as promised. The cost of buying land is extremely high, which some people cannot afford. Thus, it results to informal settlement in urban areas. Strategies to implement in order to deal with the issues of housing shortages. Promoting economic growth and development through providing job opportunities in order for people to be able to afford houses. The building of flats to accommodate the large urban population as they are built vertically. Service provision. The inability to provide services to residents in a particular area. This picture depicts an area with only one tap used by thousands of people. Issues that relate to service provision are: it is difficult to provide services to all people due to the increase in urbanization and informal settlements. Healthcare facilities, educational facilities, sanitation, clean water, and electricity, also housing, are the basic services required for human beings to survive. Without these, they won't be able to survive. No service delivery leads to many protests. For instance, the angry residents may end up burning, destroying, or blocking roads as their pleas are not taken serious. Strategies to implement in order to deal with the issues of service provision. The increase in job opportunities. In this way, economic growth is being promoted. Proper budgeting to accommodate for the provision of basic services. For instance, clean water, sanitation, electricity, which are the most services needed.
And this is the end of the lesson. Here's the list of the resources we have used throughout the lesson. Thank you.